Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of From SME to You. I am delighted by the presence of my good friend Jono Anderson, a complete personality in the analytics community, someone that knows what he's talking about. And I asked to join me so we could have a little chat about AI. What is going on? Everybody's freaking out. Everybody is using it. Very few people are using it well. Everybody's complaining about it, and it's affecting marketers particularly, and companies that have been relying on other methods that suddenly are starting to become a bit obsolete with the new technologies. So before I dive into questions, Jono, please tell me what you're seeing at the moment and what is this rumble that we're all feeling? Where are we going?
Wow, that's a nice small bit to start with, isn't it? What am I seeing and where are we going? I think there is a lot of excitement, shiny new toys, and a lot of fear. And I think both are warranted. I think so wearing my SEO hat for a moment, I see a lot of chatter around companies and organizations who are seeing the same trend, which is that they are getting far fewer clicks to their website from search, which is a trend that's been happening for years. That's not new. And if we step back a second, there's been a broad trend of the rise of zero-click searches, is the trendy phrase, where when somebody searches for something, they get an answer in situ or tool or a subsequent nav rather than clicking on a URL to go to a website. And that's been a trend for years and years and years. But now it's accelerated by orders of magnitude. And sites and site owners are starting to panic. I think potentially rightly so, because they have built commercial and economic models that assume that they can convert clicks from search engines into revenue. And I know not everybody is an SEO nerd and that there are other channels, but I think it's hard to understate the significance of search as a discovery mechanism and as one of the many, many steps in the old messy middle that people use when they are researching and evaluating and making decisions. And so what starts to happen now is sites who have historically done research and created content and answered questions are now disincentivized to do so, which creates two huge problems. One is the AI systems and LLMs that we're all very excited about run out of new inputs and they start consuming either nothing, which is broken, or their own content and output, which, if you look into the academic implications, ends up in all sorts of scary places because they just start making it nonsense. But also, it kills business models because the publishers in particular who run adverts on their websites and rely on volumes of traffic to make money can no longer do so. And that's scary because it disincentivizes things like democratic journalism, which I think might be important for society, or even just websites that post opinions or blogs that might be interesting, that might have been something that ended up on Reddit or became, et cetera, et cetera. The other thing that breaks is the broader ad ecosystem, because so much of that ecology relies on display advertising and retargeting, all of which happens on those websites from that traffic on that content, none of which now exists. So there's some big existential
it's a bit of a pickle. It's a bit of a pickle for those of us that were early-ish in our careers in the 2000s, where everything started moving into these very performance metric based. We measure everything, and we were coming the other side of it, right? Acknowledging that brand is actually the great driver of performance.
Yep.
But now we've introduced another measure of chaos, which is it's not just word of mouth, is you can't even try to guess where this is coming from, I guess, because there's and I guess it's also been happening for a while, like you say, because of all the cookie deprecation issues that we've been having. People, but like you said, if we don't have organic traffic as much, all of that first party data is also changing. So You mentioned in one of your blog posts that everything was a battle for position. Do you think that, and that we're now in a battle for perception, do you think that that is being translated correctly into, okay, we need to work better in what is our brand equity and these, salience of mind? Or are most people freaking out and going like, Reddit, Reddit, we need to do Reddit, what's Reddit?
Yeah.
I love this moment for Reddit as a many years lurker in many subreddits. I am absolutely loving that they're having this
Now
moment.
you're the
But
cool kid. Nice.
so
Yeah,
tell me
it's messy.
your thoughts on this.
It's a great question. I think everybody is still trying to treat this tactically. They are precisely as you say, where yesterday they would have said, let's do some content marketing. Now they're saying, let's do some Reddit influencing. And I think they're kind of missing the bigger point, which you use the word salience. I think that's so important. I think the thing that's changed is that these systems, whether it's ChatGPT or this next evolution of Google, get so much better at understanding, is this thing, brand, website, page, content, article, whatever, legitimately a good fit for the question this person has asked? And that's not a simple thing to define or measure or understand. And it's biased by all of the content that has ever been published on the web and human history and everything that's out there, not just your own website, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And it is so hard to tactically measure, are we a good fit for this query? Like there's so many moving parts there, and then to effectively optimize for that. And it requires, I think, as you say, a bit of a trek back away from perfect growth centric extreme clarity measurement and A/B testing of everything, back to something that looks a little bit more like old fashioned marketing, where you say, we believe and trust, which are not trendy words, that running billboards influences how people behave. We believe and trust that investing in, I don't know, the quality of our customer support scripts in our call center will have an impact on people's propensity to talk and recommend us at the pub. Like, you are never going to be able to measure that in a way that provides any degree of confidence whatsoever. But the difference is the brand who does it versus the one who don't get cited, because these systems are fuzzy and they look for the
Yeah,
impact of behavior on the corpus. And you can't join the dots up. You just can't.
yeah. So is the dashboard dead?
I hope so, right? Because the dashboard has always been a lie. The dashboard has been a flattening and an oversimplification of fuzzy human behavior and preference into a numbers game that just irons all of that out and looks at shoving people through a funnel. And the funnel no longer exists because an omniscient God now sits in between you and that audience. And before you can access that audience, you have to convince it that you are inherently a good fit. And all of your dashboards are built on the assumption that you have some kind of, we got 1 million impressions to 1,000 clicks to 10, whatever, to what, and all of that is gone. And if it's not gone yet, it will be by next week. Like, these systems will disintermediate you from the market. So yeah, I think maybe our dashboards now and the things that replace them look much more, again, I say this with the grimace as a very technical marketer, but look much more like kind of 1950s reputation scoring. Let's look at, I don't know, net promoter score is a very flawed and problematic metric, but it's probably far better than impression share. I think looking at the traditional surveying mechanisms, like how many people recognize our logo out of a sample set, that sort of thing, isn't necessarily 1 million miles away from the kinds of things that LLMs and these kinds of systems are doing, right? They are evaluating the corpus, the propensity to identify or recommend or share or recognize is dependent on how often is this thing there and how consistently is it presented. These kinds of things, I think, are probably a better dashboard, or better ingredients into a dashboard than how many clicks did we get and what was our CPC.
I love it because I think it's absolutely true. We are back to, what was it, 2015, where instead of going mental about the clicks and, the drop rate and everything. You're like, okay, let's look at incrementality as a whole between campaigns. Let's look at the referrals. Let's look at, recall, do you remember seeing this? And I don't agree with you in terms of the funnel. I do agree that the funnel in terms of the digital conversion, but you still can track, what is awareness versus consideration versus
Yes, yeah,
conversion. You can still model all of that. It's just that,
yeah. The click
like
funnel is
like
dead.
like
Sorry,
we
yeah, yeah.
say, we're running this ad on brand and you're adding this ad on performance. Still do it, but don't think that that's going to be a clear cut, result for either of them. So,
Yeah.
in this vein, you called the metrics theatrics, which I think it's fantastic and very much resonates with the Western fanatic of mine. Um, so okay, so we don't have a dashboard. We are looking to get people to know about a product or a service. What should we look at instead? Like we've said NPS, we've said recommendations, we've looked at all of that. How do you get your finance director behind all of these softer, more fuzzy ways where, we had been as marketers fighting to get in front of them and show them what they will be doing? I have my answer, but you tell me.
Um, I think a bit of humble pie might be in order. I think we've spent the last, what, 20 years saying, ha ha, we're smarter than you. We have data and metrics and everything's trackable. And we've laughed at the branding teams and we've laughed at the marketing teams. You mentioned the difference between running branding campaigns and performance campaigns. I think we've so heavily over positioned ourselves as performance, whether it's SEO, PPC, or whatever else in this ecosystem. And we have laughed at everybody else because our stuff is so much easier to measure. And now it's not. And I think going back and saying, actually, it is important to understand the difference between branding and marketing and advertising, and that they have different levers and different budgets. And that maybe actually going back head in hands and saying, you know what, actually, could we have a seat at the branding table rather than just hammering this funnel of traffic through and trying to squeeze conversions out might be quite nice. I think in the short term, there's a gold rush around tracking tools, and there are 1,000 new of these AI visibility tracking tools a day, and they're all awful. They're all awful in two ways. The data collection and sampling is really terrible. Like they're either based on panel data from people who run antivirus Chrome extensions in American households, which is might be representative of your audience, but probably not very, or they're scraping when prompts and prompt query components are exposed in URLs and aggregating that at scale, which only gives you a snapshot into parts of the first bits of conversations, which are not how people
Yeah.
interact with these tools. So neither are good models. And then when people are using them and setting them up, you're kind of artificially deciding what kind of prompts and queries you want to track, which inevitably becomes a game of ego. It's like, oh, if I'm buying shoes, do people mention Nike? And you're accidentally biasing the query and the prompt and the system, and you're only looking at what you're looking at, so you don't know what you don't know. And you get a nice, comfortable dashboard that says you are 60% visible, and it means nothing. So I think there's an option in the short term to go, we're going to try and get buy-in into these, but I don't think that's great. I also think we're stuck in a weird gray area where all of these tools are trying to provide a continuation of the current norm. So we're used to tools like, I don't know, Google Search Console or Google Analytics and ads that are based on a funnel, a click funnel. And we had a certain number of impressions, etc. Now you look at the way in which these tools work and the way people behave, they are having conversations which cite multiple options, which have links in paragraphs, which go through multiple iterations and then go backtrack and yada, yada, yada. And then you look at the mechanics behind those, where when they perform a search, they're performing 100 searches and they're doing this query fan out thing. And then they're talking to other agents that talk to other agents that bring results back. None of that flattens neatly into a how many impressions did we get? How many clicks did we get? Because this intermediary works in a different way, but all the tools try and present it as if it's a search query with a number of impressions. And so all of that, I think, is nonsense. And I wouldn't go chasing how do we get budget for these tools to perpetuate a kind of weird version of yesterday's normality that no longer represents reality. I think we have to be humble and we have to say the age of performance marketing, certainly in search, is now over. And we need to understand that it was always about brand. That it was never a performance channel. It was neither. It was never about performance nor channel. It was always brand, but we were lazy and tactical. And now we need to understand that the real game is influencing when people search in a problem space that we can solve. What do they see? What do they experience? What perceptions and perspectives do they have? Which brands do they trust? All of those things, which are hard, but that's what brand has always done. And suddenly we are allowed to say, could we create content that's designed to influence people's perspective of us? Can we spend budget engaging in firefighting on Reddit? These things are allowed. They're as much SEO as going and doing content and links and other stuff is. There as much ads. What's the point in running ads when the result below you is a YouTube video of an angry customer? This is one ecosystem. And I think zooming out a bit and being humble about doing brand stuff horizontally is probably is healthier than doubling down on metrics and dashboards.
Yeah, you're not going to find someone in me that doesn't agree. I've always been a bit of an oddball in that, because for me it's always been about alignment. And when and I've had, RIP Twitter, but I remember having these arguments, particularly with content people, going like, what do you mean you have your content marketing strategy? Your strategy is derived by the marketing strategy, which is derived by the business strategy. You can't have it independently. What's going on here? And people are like, well, no, because it was like, well, okay, fine. I'm, arguing on the internet, but
but you raised an interesting point that I think all of that, there should be a hierarchy there, but what's happening for the first time, or not for the first, what's happening, I think, is a lot of those conversations are starting to happen. And what becomes apparent is that businesses don't have a clear strategy at any level, and they don't even necessarily have a clear identity. And if you're saying you want to say, how do we win in LLMs and be recommended, etc., I think unless you have incredible clarity on what are the problems that we solve and for whom, and you can articulate that, and you can do that with precision and repetition and breadth, and then derive your strategy out and all around that, then you're never going to be in a position where you win these ecosystems. So many businesses can't tell that story.
Correctly said, because everybody's saying the same thing. You have to be distinctive. You have to be salient. But saying it and not doing it is not going to, every B2B business is in the same problem, because you have to do something to differentiate. And then, as a marketer, you write something, you try to get people behind it. Let's be a bit, I don't know, or funny, or a bit controversial, or a bit
anything
oddball. And then the minute that it hits someone that has met clients, they kill it, because, oh no, that's not the language they use. That's fine, but that's what you're here for. What we're trying to do is get their attention. We're not saying, yes, you have to be consistent, but you're just talking in the same boring 87 page deck that and it's tricky. And so do you think that this is? I think so, but I think the use of AI is, and I think you wrote about this as well, is homogenizing all of this. Like, we all have the same thoughts. Everybody's saying the same thing. There's no independent thinking that is freely expressed. I'm sure the thinking is existing, but there's no, I'm missing the personality.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be so critical. I think what's the phrase? People buy from people, and we all kind of laugh and go, ha, yeah, they do, and then go back to our corporate blogs, which are devoid of all personality, and our 12
jargon,
reasons
more jargon, more acronyms. Give me more acronyms.
Yeah. And businesses are terrified of leveraging personality, and to some degree for understandable reasons, because people leave and people are fragile, and maybe if they get popular, they demand a pay rise. Imagine having an asset that you actually invest in. But I think, so much of the internet, especially the sections of it which have been populated for and by search, just repeat the same drivel over and over again. The example I always go to is dentists. Every dentist website on the planet. How many dentists are there? A trillion? I don't know. Every single one of them has a tedious blog article from 2012 that is like 8 tips for tooth whitening, and its net value is zero on the corpus, on the human experience, in Google's evaluation, in ChatGPT, etc. It doesn't achieve nothing. And yet, this is what content marketing has been for 15 years. You just write the same banal articles, maybe 1% better than your competitors, try and squeeze some traffic out, and all that is suddenly dead. And I think what's left is an imperative that you have personality, that aside from the pages that describe your core products and services and propositions, you have to say something. You have to stand for something, not because millennials like businesses that stand for something, but because otherwise, what are you other than a service fulfillment function that could be mechanized and replaced by anybody else? And yeah,
Yeah.
as you say, be funny, be weird, be combative, be anything at all, and put a name and a face against it and earn some attention. Yeah, that's going to be so important.
I have like a million tangent questions, but I side quest. But I want
Nice.
to go back and ask you about something that you mentioned about the tracking tools for AI, because you said that these are basically built upon someone's decision of ranking something. And my question to you is, LLM tools are inherently biased because the people who build them tend to be very homogeneous. And I'm a big fan of decolonizing this side of things. There's a lot of really good blog posts and articles and podcasts about this. I think, when it comes to making business, it's important. But when it comes to other things like in insurance and medical decisions and things like that, it gets even more important. So, do you think that by people creating these dashboards that impose a bias on the bias, what happens there?
Yeah, I think you end up exactly where we already are, which is people producing 1% better versions of the resources that already exist, because big shoe manufacturer A will look at their dashboards and they will spot some gaps where big manufacturer B has slightly more visibility than them, even though that's probably not reflective of reality because their whole configuration, the way the systems work, is biased, etc. But then they will go, okay, we need to add another 2 paragraphs to our blog post about running shoes. And they will run that through ChatGPT and it'll spit out some more bits and they'll all jostle for position. And nothing meaningful in the real world will change. And nothing meaningful in the consumer experience or research or buying process or the reputation of those brands will change, because the dashboards make them lazy and comfy in a way that they are explicitly designed to do. And that's what they're for. They're not designed to incentivize differentiation. They're defensive by nature. And I think that because there is so much bias injected into the way that these are going to be configured, that will get far worse. And brands will think they're doing fine, and they will think that they're doing the right thing because they'll just be jostling in the same way that they have with their 8 great tips for tooth whitening articles, and they will miss the point. And I think there's 2 things that they will fundamentally miss, which keep me awake at night. One is that LLM systems will judge us based on the entire corpus of the web, not on our blog and our website and what words we use, but on everything that's out there. And I don't think businesses have the mental model to consider that, like what that journalist wrote or what was said on Reddit or what wasn't said in a YouTube comparison for our sector. All of those things matter as much as the words on your site in a way that we've never really comprehended. As
Yeah,
humans, we understand this inherently, but as
yeah.
businesses, it's not neat, so we've never addressed it. So that's scary. And also, the second thing is that applies to all time. So the bad reputation you got in 2012 for annoying a customer or having poor packaging or whatever is indelible, indemnifiable, all of those things. And maybe the systems decay stuff slightly based on weight through time, but I'm not sure it's in their interest to do so, and or either programmatically or strategically. I think understanding that an organization had a bad reputation for a thing is exactly the kind of thing I want to know when I'm researching. And today, our marketing does a great job of covering that up, right? If you've got a bad reputation, you shout louder over here, you change your tactics, you cover over your deficiencies. It's what marketing is,
I,
assuming that
I,
your audience isn't omniscient.
yeah. And I was going to ask you something related to that because obviously everybody's buying Dubai chocolate.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So it still works, but how long?
Yeah, well, definitely there's something to be said about recency and trends, and I think actually LLMs will in the short term not do a great job on that because getting immediacy in there is difficult, and all their RAG stuff on Google, etc., is not great. But I think the ability to inject new ideas and to make them quote unquote go viral, I think is one of the tactics that might continue to work. If you can build consensus quickly first on a new thing, yeah, you can do, and I think paying off influencers and being multimodal and seeding stuff is definitely one of the categories of marketing, for better or worse, that will definitely grow in the coming years. I think influencer marketing has had a turbulent ride for a bunch of good reasons, but I think it's definitely here to stay. I think being able to spend some money to get 100 influential people to say your spiel in different places before anyone else says it, yeah, that's going to be huge. Big deal.
Yeah, I agree. And one of the things that you wrote as well, which I find fascinating, is that writing those, 10 ways to whiten your teeth articles may no longer be essentials. Hurrah. So what is the content marketing team going to do?
Ah, great
Video,
question.
podcasts, TikToks, what are they going to do now?
I love this. I don't know, but I do. It does concern me that we have 20-ish years of internet that was designed almost explicitly to support that form of content marketing. Every website has a set of service pages and an about page and a blog. And the blog is a repository of articles that were designed to fuel that click funnel. If you were to build the next generation of that website tomorrow, would it look the same? Would it have a blog? Would the blog be an article? Yada yada. But then also maybe there's space to go further. We've said for a long time, for many years, Google has parroted this, build for humans, but humans are only 50% of your audience. And maybe if part of the responsibility of content is to convince machines and help them understand what are the problems we solve and for who in what ways, etc., and to build that salience and to repeat those patterns, maybe there is an argument that content that is for machines, maybe not exclusively for machines, but maybe that definitely actively considers machines in a way that it hasn't, becomes more important. And
So can
those
we,
service
yeah, so we can have a robot writing for robots.
maybe, and those services pages look different, or maybe you break them down more and that there are robotic versions that are more succinct. I don't know if your website is designed to be a marketing pamphlet whose job is to emotionally convince humans. That's not the same platform that's designed to convey information to a machine. At least not today.
No,
Right? Google's got quite good at synthesizing across both of those, but ChatGPT isn't. They're stripping out the raw materials. Maybe that's a different thing. So maybe content marketing becomes more about how do we articulate precisely and specifically, but also at scale and everywhere, our messaging and our proposition, etc. And maybe that looks different to 10 great tips for teeth whitening.
so, what does this? One of the other things I'm very interested in, and I want to ask you. So, what does this all mean for the young wannabe marketer or someone that doesn't want to be a marketer but is going to end up doing, hopefully, some work experience because internships are also hard to come by at the moment. I,
Yeah.
I don't want to swear in my podcast. You know what I would say in person. But clearly the very hands-on training, learn on the job thing that I did, I don't think is going to serve people as well as it did me. um 10, 15 years ago when I first went like, yes, I'm going to learn all by myself. And it's got a completely different set of skills that I don't have because I'm not your coding mentality. What should the young people that are coming out of high school think when they want to not be an influencer, essentially?
This is so difficult because if you look at, I think we are so lucky with our timing because if you look at what coming into the workforce looks like now, so many of those junior roles that we learned by doing, probably badly, will be
Yeah.
mechanized. Things like, I don't know, I was never in the ad side, but imagine 15 years ago, building a Google Ads campaign involved researching keywords and managing lists and excluding terms and setting up conversion mechanics, etc. All of that is now automated, more or less, like, and will increasingly become so to the point where that interface looks like define your audience, define your goals, hands off. And
Yep.
there's so many other flavors of that.
And don't touch it because it'll be a mess.
So yeah, so how do people learn is a huge question. I think workforces will need to become more like, I don't know, schools, best case, crashes, worst case, where the value will be in strategic, differentiated thinking. And you learn that through time and experience. So that's super hard to convey. Like maybe mentorships become more common. So I would be seeking out where can I get exposure to smart people who are doing smart stuff, even if your job is just sit in the room and watch them with the expectation that you don't do anything productive for the next 5 years, maybe. That's hard. I think there is an opportunity, though, which is not to get bogged down in the trap of performance marketing like we did, that it is okay to say, you know what, we should spend some budget on addressing this reputational problem that we have with our packaging on this product. Or actually, it turns out I've done a bunch of research and there's huge market demand for us to open on Tuesdays. We don't currently open on Tuesdays, but our competitors do, and we're losing market share. And when people research us with ChatGPT, etc., it looks like we're not being recommended because that system understands that we're not available. Therefore, here is a business case. Like you have, I think you can have permission to not confine yourselves to the boxes and boundaries that we did. SEO is so bad for this. For how so long now, SEO has marketed itself as a combination of technical stuff, content stuff, and link stuff. And it's only the SEO industry that's defined that, right? There's no reason why you can't say, and also we should consider where the CEO goes for lunch, because if we change that, we might unlock some networking opportunities, which allow us to partner with another organization, which allows us to access this secondary market. That could just as easily be part of your remit. So I think being smart and giving yourself permission to color outside the lines now more than ever is going to be super important. And yeah, as the internet evolves and fractures and TikTok gets replaced by whatever comes tomorrow, I think youth and energy might be a huge asset for saying, okay, here is where we should bet. And here is what that bet looks like. That's cool.
Yeah, those lateral thinking moments. And I call them stupid ideas because I have them all the
Yeah.
time. And yeah, 80% of them are stupid, and 10% of those are completely impossible to do. But I, I like someone that goes like, "Can you listen to me for a minute and tell me if this is coconuts?" Like, yeah, that's what we should more be encouraged to do.
Yeah.
Cool. Right. I've not done this before, but I wanted to ask you a set of rapid fire questions.
Oh, wow. Scary. Okay.
Let's go. What is one marketing or SEO buzzword that you wished would be vanished forever?
Content marketing, definitely content marketing. It didn't mean anything. It doesn't mean anything. It's not a thing. It meant scaled production of mediocre articles, and it stopped working finally, thankfully.
What is your must-have tool or software that you can't live without?
Ooh, Chrome developer tools.
Ah,
I want to look at network requests and inspect the DOM and pull apart CSS and HTML. It is so good now for like, I want to replay how that element animated in on the sidebar and understand what happens if it's really nice.
is there any brand that comes to mind that is doing the change that we're going through right?
Oh, I hate this question. No, I don't think so. Because the first people will you sit through these kinds of conversations and describe it, and everyone goes, yeah, yeah, okay, we get it, we understand, but our competitors aren't doing it, so why should we? And I understand why, because senior leaders in businesses are incentivized to not mess up. They're not incentivized to leapfrog, like they're defensive by nature. That is the job. So they all
Yeah.
wait and they all wait for each other, and then they fail gradually. And eventually somebody makes one step forward. Frustrating.
Is there such a thing as a quick win in this day and age?
I don't think there are any tactics anymore, but I think, yeah, there's definitely quick wins because everybody's website is currently broken. Everybody's content is currently awful. Everybody's organization is currently structured in the wrong way. So, yeah, I think the process of fixing that and aligning for the future, you can find a whole bunch of quick wins. Yeah,
Huh.
the unbreaking, you can definitely do quickly.
What would you do if you were not in this current marketing palaver?
I like the idea of urban design. I think because it's quite similar to the whole SEO thing. I like going,
Oh.
yeah, like and I played a lot of SimCity, I guess, as a child, but that kind of thing about how do you design urban spaces and how do you account for enough electricity and water and where should the park go? All of that I think is quite interesting.
Who's your marketing hero?
Yeah, yeah, you for sure, obviously. I can't pick just one. I agree with bits of lots of people's opinions. I saw a really good. I'll give you two. I'll cheat. Like I saw a really good talk from Mark Ritson a couple of months ago, who is very, very good. He's kind of old school advertising mentality, but for modern marketing, he does a great job of talking like the difference between branding and marketing and how they all work together. But I don't think he's deeply in the digital space. So him and Jess Schultz,
He
my
would
good
he would
friend.
he would definitely say that. And who else?
Jess Schultz is a good friend of mine who is very much on the what does all of this multi-surface postmodern digital marketing look like and how do you manage a brand in that space? I think if those two could fuse into one person, that'd be perfect.
Oh, let's try and get him on the pod. Uh,
Yeah.
what is you had for some time, I don't know if you're still doing it, the video games and marketing,
Yeah,
short
yeah.
content. What is your ultimate video game choice?
Oh, that's tricky. I don't know. I go through phases of addictions with stuff. I like a big civilization strategy kind of game where I've got to puppeteer a galactic society and from like the tiniest decisions right up to monumental, we're going to war with another civil. Anything that's a kind of civ game.
Brilliant. And what is your surprising hobby that people would not necessarily know?
I've got a few. I did a blacksmithing course this morning. We were saying earlier that was unexpected and weird, but I run daysoftheyear.com, which is my weird side hobby.
Yes, one of my favorite websites. What's your
Thank
favorite
you.
day of the year?
Take your webmaster to lunch day because it also falls on the same date as fried chicken day, I think, which is a nice combination. So I get taken out for
Uh,
KFC once a year.
do you remember what day that falls on?
No, no, I feel terrible with it, but no, it's that's a fun game, and that's it's taught me a lot running that.
Is that website still receiving tons of traffic? I always
Yeah,
look
and yeah,
it.
it's suffering. It's having exactly the same problem we were talking about earlier. That it's an ad-supported website. It makes money based
Yeah,
on ads, not a lot, but and our traffic is decreasing. Our impressions are still very, very high because we get cited by AI results, but and we rank first for a whole bunch of queries. But ranking first puts us three scrolls below the bottom of the first page on Google. And people
yeah.
are researching research. So I'm right in the thick of this. Thankfully, it's not my livelihood, but I see that challenge. And so we're asking a lot of hard questions about what is the value we provide and how do we improve our research and how do we continue to bolster the value of pages and all of these kinds of challenges that everyone's having. So yeah, fascinating to be in the thick of it.
Thank you so much, Jono. Give us your parting words.
Thank you. No, I think my parting words. Wow. Don't accept mediocrity. I think so much of digital marketing, we've got lazy and we've accepted that websites are broken and terrible and that content marketing is disassociated from brand strategy and that everything should be measurable, but nothing's really measurable. So we measure the wrong things to kind of get away with having a dashboard that drives the wrong behaviors. I think color outside the box, ask the hard questions and differentiate because otherwise, what are you for? And if you can't answer that well, then you're on a very short runway.
Yeah, and you're gonna have a lot of tough questions to answer to your board.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
Thank you so much, Jono. This has been an absolute pleasure.